Have you ever sat on the edge of your bed late at night, pulled up your banking app, and just stared at the screen? You look at that balance, and a familiar, heavy feeling settles in your chest. It is not necessarily panic. It is something quieter than that. It is exhaustion. You have been working hard. You have been pulling extra shifts, skipping dinners out with your friends, and saying no to the things you actually want to do. But for some reason, that number on the screen refuses to budge past a certain baseline. It feels like there is an invisible ceiling holding you down, and no matter how much effort you pour into the machine, the output never changes. You see people online talking about their investment portfolios, their property investments, and how they made their first $100,000 before they turned 25. They make it sound like a simple math equation. Just save 20%, put it into an index fund, and let the market do the work. But you are sitting there wondering how you are even supposed to start investing when a single unexpected trip to the mechanic can completely wipe out 3 months of disciplined saving. If you feel this way, I want you to take a deep breath. You are not lazy, and you are not bad with money. What you are experiencing is a very real, very brutal psychological and mathematical reality. The first $10,000 is not just slightly difficult to save. It is a completely different game than everything that comes after it. It is the hardest financial milestone you will ever face, and today, we are going to talk about why that is, and how you can finally break through that wall without losing your mind. When we think about building wealth, we are usually fed a narrative that is entirely centered around personal blame. If you are broke, the internet tells you it is because you buy too many lattes, or because you lack the discipline to wake up at 5 in the morning and work on a side hustle. We are taught to look at money as a pure reflection of our willpower. But this point of view completely ignores how human psychology and basic physics actually work. When you are starting from zero, or close to zero, traditional financial advice is almost entirely useless to you. Why? Because most financial advice is designed for people who already have momentum. Think about a massive space rocket sitting on a launch pad. To get that rocket off the ground and through the first few miles of Earth's atmosphere, it burns an unbelievable amount of fuel. In fact, it uses up more than 80% of its total fuel supply just during the initial launch phase. It takes an incredible amount of violent, exhausting energy just to move a few miles into the sky. But once that same rocket breaks through the atmosphere and enters orbit, it requires almost no energy at all to travel thousands of miles. It glides. It has momentum. Your financial journey works exactly the same way. When you are trying to accumulate your first $10,000, you are that rocket on the launch pad. You are burning an immense amount of mental, physical, and emotional fuel just to lift off the ground. You are doing 100% of the heavy lifting. Your money is not helping you yet, because there is not enough of it to generate its own power. Every single dollar in that initial balance has to be carved out of your actual sweat, your time, and your sacrifices. It is pure, unadulterated friction. And it is completely normal that it feels exhausting. Let us look at the simple math of why this happens, because numbers do not lie, but they can be incredibly discouraging if you do not understand the context behind them. Imagine two different people. We will call the first person Leo. Leo is working a regular job, trying his absolute best to save money, and he starts with $0. He manages to save $100 a month. At the end of the first year, Leo has $1,200. He feels a little bit of pride, but then he looks at the global economy, the cost of housing, and the price of groceries, and he realizes $1,200 can barely cover 1 month of rent. His money earned almost nothing in interest, because a standard savings account pays pennies. Leo did all the work, and the reward feels incredibly small. Now, imagine a second person named Sarah. Sarah already has $100,000 saved up. She does not change anything about her life. She does not work extra hours, and she does not skip any meals. She simply leaves that money sitting in a conservative investment account that earns a modest 7% return. At the end of the year, Sarah's account has grown by $7,000 without her lifting a single finger. When Leo looks at Sarah, he feels a deep sense of injustice. He thinks, I worked myself to the bone for $1,200, and she made $7,000 while she slept. This is where the psychological trap snaps shut. Leo starts to believe that the system is completely rigged, or that he is fundamentally incapable of building wealth, so he stops trying. He spends his savings on a weekend trip or a new gadget because his brain tells him, what is the point anyway? What Leo does not see is that Sarah once had $0 too. She had to go through the exact same grueling, unrewarding phase that he is in right now. But there is an even deeper reason why the first $10,000 feels impossible, and it has less to do with math and more to do with the environment of scarcity. When your bank account is low, the world is exponentially more expensive for you than it is for someone with money. This is a concept known as the scarcity trap. When you do not have a financial cushion, you are constantly forced to make decisions that cost you more money in the long run. You buy the cheaper, low-quality tires for your car because you cannot afford the premium ones, which means those tires wear out in 12 months instead of 4 years, forcing you to pay for replacements twice as fast. You cannot afford to buy your groceries in bulk, so you pay a premium for smaller packages every single week. You might miss a utility payment because the timing of your paycheck did not align perfectly with the bill's due date, which hits you with a late fee. When you live in this zone, you are constantly playing defense. Your brain is locked in a state of chronic stress, operating in survival mode. Psychologists have found that living under this kind of financial strain actually reduces a person's effective IQ by up to 13 points. It compromises your decision-making capacity. You are so busy worrying about how to survive the next 14 days that you physically and mentally do not have the cognitive bandwidth to plan for the next 14 years. You are trapped in a cycle where your lack of money actively prevents you from saving money. So how do we break out of this loop? The shit begins when you realize that the first $10,000 is not about becoming wealthy. It is not about buying assets, and it is not about retiring early. The first $10,000 is about one thing, and one thing only: buying your peace of mind. I want you to imagine how your daily life would change if you had a crisp, untouched $10,000 sitting in a separate, quiet account. Not money for a vacation, not money for a down payment on a house, just money that exists to protect you. Suddenly, the entire world shifts around you. If your boss comes to your desk tomorrow and demands that you work unpaid overtime under toxic conditions, you do not have to swallow your pride and accept it out of fear of being evicted. You have options. If your car breaks down on the highway, it is no longer an existential crisis that ruins your entire month and forces you onto credit card debt. It is simply an annoying inconvenience. You pay the mechanic, you drive away, and your life continues uninterrupted. This is the turning point where money stops being a source of anxiety and starts becoming a tool for personal autonomy. $10,000 does not make you rich, but it builds a psychological fortress around your life. It gives you the space to breathe, to think clearly, and to make decisions based on what you actually want, rather than what you are forced to do out of desperation. When you cross the $10,000 threshold, your brain chemistry actually changes. You move out of survival mode and into strategy mode. You stop looking at the world as a series of financial threats and start looking at it as a landscape of opportunities. The confidence that comes from knowing you can survive a major financial storm changes the way you carry yourself. You speak differently in job interviews. You carry less tension in your shoulders when you walk into a store. You regain control over your time. Getting to this point does not require you to adopt a radical, toxic lifestyle where you sleep 3 hours a night and eat nothing but instant noodles. That approach is unsustainable, and it almost always leads to a massive rebound of emotional overspending later on. Instead, you need to widen the gap between what you earn and what you spend in a way that feels quiet, manageable, and permanent. The first step is to remove the daily friction of decision-making. Every time you have to consciously choose to save money, you are using up a limited supply of willpower. If you have to look at your paycheck every 2 weeks and manually move money into a savings account, eventually you will have a stressful day, your willpower will fail, and you will find an excuse to spend that money instead. You need to automate your savings so that your human flaws are taken completely out of the equation. Set up your banking system so that the moment your income arrives, a small, predetermined percentage is automatically transferred into a completely separate account before you ever have to look at it. If you never see that money in your main checking account, your brain will naturally adjust to living on whatever is left over. You start small. If you cannot do 10%, do 5%. If you cannot do 5%, start with $20 a week. The amount matters far less than building the automatic habit. The second step is to audit your invisible leaks. Most people do not lose their savings to large, dramatic purchases. We lose our savings to the quiet, slow bleed of unexamined habits. It is the monthly subscriptions we forgot we signed up for. It is the convenience fees we pay for food delivery services because we were too tired to cook. It is the small daily purchases that feel insignificant in the moment but compound into a massive financial drain by the end of the month. I am not telling you to cut out every single piece of joy in your life, but I am asking you to look at your bank statements with absolute honesty. Ask yourself, is this specific convenience fee worth trading away my long-term peace of mind? Is this subscription more valuable to me than a $10,000 safety net? When you frame your purchases not in terms of dollars, but in terms of the freedom you are giving up to pay for them, your behavior begins to shift naturally. Finally, you must accept that the beginning of this journey is supposed to feel slow. You have to lower your expectations for immediate results and focus entirely on your habits. In the first few months, your progress will look incredibly small. You might only save a few $100s, and it will feel like it is not making a difference in the grand scheme of things. But you have to remember the space rocket. You are burning the fuel right now to break away from gravity. The visible rewards will come later, but the internal foundation is being built right now. If you are standing at the starting line today, or if you are currently stuck somewhere in the middle of this difficult climb, I want you to remember that progress is a winding road. There will be months where you do everything right, and then life will throw an unexpected expense at you that forces you to take 2 steps back. That is not a sign of failure. That is just life happening. Building your first $10,000 is a masterclass in emotional resilience. It is a process that forces you to confront your insecurities, your relationship with status, and your deepest anxieties about the future. Every single dollar you manage to save is a small, quiet victory. It is a promise you are keeping to your future self. Do not compare your day 1 to someone else's day 1000. You do not need to have everything figured out right now. You just need to make the next right choice. Be patient with yourself. Lower your head, trust the slow process, and remember that the heaviest lifting happens at the very beginning. Once you break through this wall, the ground beneath your feet will stabilize, the air will clear, and you will realize that you are finally truly free. Keep moving forward, one small step at a time. Progress will always beat perfection.